Okay, so welcome to another deep dive, you guys.
All right.
Today, we're going to be taking a look at some excerpts from A Confederacy of Dunces
Really fun one.
by John Kennedy Toole. So this is really cool.
Hmm.
Um, our mission here is to kind of see if we can get a sense of who this main character, Ignatius J. Reilly, is.
Yeah.
Just based on these little snippets, that you guys have provided.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty iconic book, and it's a fun. We'll see what we can find out about Ignatius just from these excerpts.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, too, because it's like,
Right.
it's a work of fiction, obviously, so we're not talking about like a historical figure
Right.
or, anything like that. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, like you were saying, it's a pretty iconic character, so we're going to see what we can learn about him.
Well, and even though it's a fictional character, I think there's a lot about,
Yeah.
sort of human nature and the way people are, and especially, in relationship to maybe the expectations of society and stuff that I think we can glean from these excerpts.
For sure.
So.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I mean, he's like this larger than life
He is.
character. So even just from like the first paragraph
Yeah.
of what we're looking at here,
Yeah.
he's got like such an incredible physical description.
Yeah. I know. Isn't that great?
So what stands out to you about that initial,
Yeah.
image that Toole paints of him?
Well, yeah, I mean, just the physical description, he's got this huge, fleshy balloon of a head, which right away,
Yeah.
gives you a sense of this guy's
Yeah.
kind of outsized personality. And then he's wearing this, green hunting cap with these ear flaps.
Oh, yeah.
And like the ear flaps are sticking out. And it's just such a, I don't know, it's such a comical
It's so specific.
big tail. Yeah,
Yeah.
like he's receiving signals from two different planets or something.
Totally.
And you've got these full pursed lips beneath this bushy black mustache
Oh, yeah.
with like little folds filled with disapproval.
Oh, my God.
And potato chip crumbs, which is, just such a, just screams kind of, self-importance and just sort of slovenliness,
Right, and this like complete lack of self-awareness.
Total lack of self-awareness.
Yeah, it's so funny.
And then these supercilious blue and yellow eyes that are like,
Right.
looking down on everybody, with disdain.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, right away you get the sense that this is somebody who considers himself, intellectually and morally superior to pretty much everybody around him.
Absolutely. And it's like he doesn't even realize how he's coming across, right? Like how he's presenting himself.
Not at all. Not at all.
I mean, it's funny too, because there's this idea that runs throughout like all of these excerpts of like, he's constantly judging everyone else's like bad taste in dress.
Totally.
Especially if it's new or expensive.
Right.
So what is it about that's so off-putting to him?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, for Ignatius, this is not just a matter of like personal preference, right?
Yeah.
He elevates it to this philosophical and even like spiritual level.
Yeah.
Owning anything new or expensive in his mind is not just like a fashion crime.
Yeah.
It's an indication of a lack of theology and geometry.
Oh, yeah.
Which in his sort of dramatic worldview
Yeah.
could even cast doubts upon one's soul.
That's so funny.
So, it's this warped but like deeply held belief,
Right.
this connection between like
Yeah.
material possessions and this kind of intellectual and spiritual bankruptcy.
Right.
And it does make you wonder what sort of anxieties about like modern life or whatever are fueling that kind of rigid viewpoint,
And then, of course, like the irony of all of it is that he thinks his clothes are like the epitome of like comfortable and sensible.
Right, exactly.
Exactly. But they're like the most ridiculous.
Out.
So talk about like what's the logic behind some of his like, fashion choices?
Well, according to Ignatius, it's all practicality.
Yeah.
So, that hunting cap is not a fashion statement.
Right.
It's to prevent head colds.
Right.
The tweed trousers, which, just sound enormous,
They sound huge.
are chosen for their durability. And he thinks they allow for unusually free locomotion.
I love that.
And he even, is finds a certain comfort in the pockets of warm, stale air
Oh my God.
that are in these pleats.
So gross.
The plaid flannel shirt serves as a jacket.
Of course.
The muffly is essential for protecting the skin between his ear flaps and his collar.
Right.
So, he's not eccentric. He's just being rational
Right.
and attending to his very specific physical needs.
It's so funny.
So it's a great example of how he constructs his own reality, regardless of how it appears to other people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right there.
Okay, so we also get these scenes where he's like out in the world.
Yes.
And one of the first ones that we see here is this like
Yes.
incident at D.H. Holmes.
At the department store, right?
Which is like a department store, yeah. So
Yeah.
can you walk us through like what happens there?
Yeah, so he's at D.H. Holmes, which is this, big department store in New Orleans. And it seems like the spark for this whole incident is this interaction that he has with this elderly gentleman who's a member of the Golden Age Club.
Gotcha.
And this just escalates so incredibly quickly. The old man is yelling about being arrested.
Oh my God.
This woman intervenes, accuses the policeman of being a dirty cop.
Oh yeah.
And then Mrs. Reilly, Ignatius's mother, shows up, laden with like bakery goods. And it's just like,
it's so funny.
Oh my God. And then Ignatius, the dramatic protagonist of his own life, cries out, "Mother, not a moment too soon.
I'm died.
I have been seized." It's like he's been waiting for this audience,
So he's loving it.
Yeah, he's loving it. He's like, oh, finally, something's happening to me.
Right.
I'm important.
This is my moment.
This is my moment, yeah.
Yeah, and it just keeps going like...
It spirals.
So over the top.
Yeah, it spirals wildly out of control from there.
Yeah. What are some of the lines or reactions that really capture like the absurdity of that?
Well, and there's so many. The old man's like bewildered cries. The woman's like fierce defense of this grandpa. It's like this whole street play is unfolding.
Totally.
And Mrs. Reilly's like, maternal protectiveness kicking in, even though you kind of get the sense right away that she's used to this.
Right.
With Ignatius, nothing new.
Yeah. Yeah, but Ignatius's pronouncements are just like gold, Oh yeah. He asserts that this is clearly a case for the ACLU.
He suddenly starts, yearning for his lost love, Myrna Minkoff.
Right.
Who he believes knows about those things.
I love that.
And then you've got the old man's classic line, it's the communist, which, is this, it's just like tinged with this Cold War paranoia.
Oh, totally.
And you just get the sense of all these different anxieties colliding in this one very public space.
Yeah. And even amidst all of this chaos, he's still presenting himself as like this super intelligent and like he's just...
Well, he's 30.
Right. He's like, I'm 30,
Right. Which you can only imagine raises a few eyebrows.
Yeah, no kidding.
Given his appearance and behavior.
Totally.
And when the policeman inquires about his, what do you do?
Right.
Mrs. Reilly kind of wearily steps in and is like, well, when, Ignatius said, help me at home because I got this terrible arthritis.
Right.
And then Ignatius elaborates on his work.
Yeah.
Mentioned that he does dust a bit. He's currently engaged in writing a lengthy indictment against our century.
Oh, my God.
And let's not forget
the
cheese dip.
The cheese dip.
Making an occasional cheese dip.
That's so funny.
Which Mrs. Reilly enthusiastically endorses.
Totally.
And then, of course, you get the old man's well-meaning but completely out of touch comment. Like, most boys are out running around all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And then the policeman's exasperation is just mounting and mounting. It's really funny.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting, too, because, like, there are all these different interpretations of what's happening. Like, the old man thinks it's a communist plot.
That's right.
Mrs. Reilly's, like, fearing police brutality, and then Ignatius is like, oh, this is a violation of my civil liberties.
Right. I'm being seized.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Yeah, it's great. And it really is this, like, little microcosm of how, different people perceive the same event.
Right.
Through such different lenses.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do they eventually escape this whole...
Well, they make this kind of undignified retreat down Canal Street into the French Quarter.
Oh, yeah.
Mrs. Reilly's, like, dragging him along. Come on, Ignatius, we gotta go.
Right.
Of course, Ignatius starts complaining about a heart murmur.
Oh, yeah.
And their exchange about his health is so funny. She's like, oh, shut up. You know how you think I feel. And then and Ignatius is going on about how the heart is, so important at any age. And he's worried about his lute string amidst, this potential for a hemorrhage.
Oh, yeah.
So it's very much like,
It's him.
It's all about him and his comfort and his pronouncements.
Totally.
Right? Yeah.
Okay, so then they end up at this bar.
Right, the Night of Joy.
The Night of Joy, yeah. So what's his reaction to this place?
His senses are immediately offended.
Of course they are.
Yeah, as soon as they walk in, the place is kind of dimly lit.
Right.
Smells of bourbon and cigarette butts. He's like, my God, Mother.
Yeah.
It smells awful. My stomach is beginning to churn.
Oh,
He's clearly not a connoisseur of the local nightlife.
Right. So they meet these people at the bar, this young man and this woman, Darlene.
Right. A blonde woman named Darlene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how does Ignatius interact with them?
Well, Mrs. Reilly, bless her heart, she tries to make polite conversation with the young man. And Ignatius, true to his nature, just dismisses them both as preposterous people.
Oh my God.
And makes it very clear that he's, he's only there as an observer.
Right.
And he's not especially anxious to mingle. So very
condescending, creating this immediate barrier
yeah.
between himself and anybody he deems beneath him.
Which seems to be most of humanity.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
But Darlene seems to find him kind of interesting.
Yeah, well, she's drawn in, I think particularly when Mrs. Reilly mentions Ignatius's bus story.
Yeah.
Which, apparently he's already told 4 times.
Right.
And Darlene explicitly says, I like good stories.
Right.
Do you have a spicy one? So I think there's a sense that his strangeness, the sheer oddity of him, is kind of what's capturing her attention.
Yeah. It's like that human fascination with the bizarre.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then there's this funny part where they start talking about his outfit.
Right.
And contrasting it with this young man's.
Right. Well, the young man is clearly proud of his velvet jacket that cost a fortune.
Oh, yeah.
He's totally fascinated by Ignatius's green hunting cap.
Yeah.
Even offers $10 for it.
Oh, my God.
Reveals that he's a dealer in used clothing.
Yeah, that's great.
So, yeah, I think that highlights this contrast in their values.
Mm-hmm.
The young man sees this potential, monetary value in Ignatius's eccentricity.
Yeah.
Whereas Ignatius is completely oblivious to any of those considerations.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so shifting gears a little bit, we see that the Reillys are facing some financial pressure.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Reilly's trying to manage it.
Right.
So what is she doing?
Well, she's grappling with these, very real financial worries.
Right.
She mentions maybe mortgaging the house.
Yeah.
Even considers going to the homestead to try and get some funds.
Gotcha.
But Ignatius, safely ensconced in his intellectual pursuits,
right, of course,
is completely opposed to dealing with these usurers.
Yeah.
And he just dismisses her concerns.
Yeah.
It's oh, something will turn up.
Right. He's so nonchalant about it.
Yeah, and he's just so confident that the universe will provide, even though he's completely inactive.
Yeah.
So it's just this real, detachment from reality.
Totally. And what does he even consider work at this point?
Well, his primary and seemingly all-consuming occupation is writing this indictment against, the failings of the 20th century.
Right.
He's also happy to offer his opinions on things like television.
Yeah.
Clearasil.
Right.
He laments the distinct lack of theology and geometry in the U.S.
Of course.
These intellectual endeavors, however unconventional or self-serving, completely take precedence over anything mundane concerns.
Right, like paying bills.
Like paying bills, getting a job.
Right. Oh, man. So we also meet this character, Patrolman Mancuso.
Right.
Who's constantly showing up at their house.
Yeah, he seems to have become kind of a fixture in their lives.
Right.
Often on the receiving end of Mrs. Reilly's increasingly desperate complaints about Ignatius.
Right.
He doesn't appreciate me. Yeah. He won't get a job.
Yeah.
She even hints that she's, turning to drink to cope.
Oh, poor Mrs. Reilly.
Yeah, Mancuso, in his blunt way. Offers these observations. He suggests she spoiled him, and so it really paints this picture of a long-suffering mother at her wit's end and this kind of exasperated cop who's clearly dealt with the Reillys before.
Right, he's like, I know the trick.
Yeah, he's like, oh, God, not these guys again.
Okay, so Ignatius and Mrs. Reilly also have this big blow-up fight.
Right.
What sets that off?
Well, it seems to be triggered by Mrs. Reilly's insistence that Ignatius needs to find some kind of employment, which, is totally reasonable.
Yeah.
And Ignatius reacts with outrage,
Right.
accuses her of launching a personal attack in his own home,
Oh, my God.
his sanctuary of, intellectual pursuit.
Right.
He retreats to his room, slams the door.
Oh, my God.
Immediately immerses himself in his writings about Hraswitha, this medieval dramatist, and his profound disdain for television.
Right.
So it's classic Ignatius.
Yeah, totally.
Just retreat into his own little world.
Yeah.
When faced with anything unpleasant, when
reality sets in.
Yeah.
And then it's so funny, they have this like conversation through the door.
Oh yeah, through the closed door. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mrs. Reilly's like, desperately trying to get back in. He's like, no, I'm working on an especially succinct passage of my magnum opus.
Of course.
He accuses her of being momentarily deranged.
Oh my God.
Suspects she might be armed with a knife or a broken wine bottle.
Oh yeah. It's so funny.
It's so over the top.
And then he's like, oh, my valve.
Right.
It's closing.
As if he's having some kind of like
medical emergency.
Yeah. And then we also get a glimpse of like his room.
Yes.
And it's just like,
well, she finally gets into the room.
Yeah.
And it's, it's just a mess.
Yeah.
There's trash on the floor.
So
and he's like, oh, that's my worldview.
Yeah.
Still in the process of being incorporated into a whole.
It's so funny.
And it's just this great visual metaphor for,
right.
his kind of cluttered, disorganized,
yeah,
unfinished intellectual and emotional state.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Right.
Okay, so Mrs. Reilly's like, really trying to get him to get a job.
Right. She is determined he must find employment.
Yes. Yeah. And so he goes on this like disastrous interview.
Yes, this legendary interview.
At this insurance company.
At the insurance company, right?
Yeah. So what makes it such a failure?
What? Oh, my God.
I mean, pretty much every aspect of this interview is a masterclass in how not to get a job.
Totally.
I mean, his attire, first of all.
Yeah.
Still includes the green hunting cap.
Right. In an office.
Right. And it's an improperly heated office.
Yeah.
So he's complaining about the chill.
Right.
He's complaining about the fluorescent lights, baking their brains out.
That's great.
And then he punctuates the interview with this monstrous belch.
I love it.
And then his pronouncement that he's an anachronism.
Oh, yeah.
And that people resent it.
Yeah.
Pretty much sums up his total lack of self-awareness in a professional setting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and then even like Mancuso.
Right.
Tries to give him some advice.
Right. Mancuso's like...
But it backfires.
Well-intentioned advice just completely backfires.
Not bad.
Yeah. He just suggests, look up.
Right.
Try to be optimistic. And Ignatius just erupts.
Yeah.
He rants about Mancuso sowing that unnatural garbage. Right.
Into his mother's mind.
Right.
And he's like, optimism nauseates me. It's perverse.
Yeah.
He believes that, since man's fall, his proper position is one of misery.
Oh, my God.
So poor Ignatius.
Yeah, it's just a very trapped in his own...
Bleak worldview of the world.
Yeah.
And then there's this part where, like, they go off on this tangent about Mrs. Reilly's confession.
Yeah.
And he gets so mad about, like...
Oh, he is incensed.
Offended.
That her transgression, which was interrupting his critical work of great brilliance, was only met with 3 Hail Marys and an Our Father.
Oh, yeah.
And, his pronouncement, no wonder I cannot support the church.
That's so funny.
Just really illustrates his monumental self-importance.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then even, like...
And then Mancuso
tries to
be friendly.
In a normal interaction with him.
Yeah, just a simple like, hey, can I get some bowling advice?
Yeah.
And this triggers this wild tirade. He accuses the bowling alley proprietress of being a Nazi.
Oh, my God.
And he accuses Mancuso of being a homewrecker.
I know, it's so funny.
And it's just...
Where does that even come from?
I know, it's just so out of left field.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ignatius then ends up working as a hot dog vendor.
That's right.
How does Mrs. Reilly feel?
She is mortified.
What's she about?
She is deeply ashamed.
No.
She, confides in Santa Battalia.
Yeah.
Her voice is heavy with grief.
Oh, no.
She's lamenting Ignatius's attire.
Right.
Being out on the street like a bum, and Santa's like, yeah, he's a big fat bum.
Oh, my God.
Bum is, right?
That's so mean.
I know.
That's so funny.
It's really funny. But yeah, so Mrs. Reilly is just like beside herself with embarrassment.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And there's also this funny thing where, like, he keeps getting locked in the bathroom.
Yes, adding another layer.
Which is just, like,
comedic misery.
Yeah, it just adds to like the chaos.
She's like, he goes to the bathroom and locks himself in and splashes water all over the floor.
Oh, but
it's just...
That's so funny.
Yeah, just another little detail that's so telling.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then like his relationship with his boss,
right?
Mr. Clyde, is just like...
Oh, yeah. It's immediately adversarial. Mr. Clyde's exasperated by him.
Yeah.
He's calling him a fat bum to his face.
Oh, my God.
Ignatius refers to government employees as having, a total vacancy,
right.
which occupies the space where most other people have faces.
Yeah.
He even consumes a hot dog without paying.
I know.
Suggesting it be deducted from his miserable wage.
That's amazing.
So, given his complete disregard for authority,
right,
the Board of Health complaint seems inevitable.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so then he ends up at this place.
Levy Pants.
Levy Pants.
Yes.
Can you set the scene for us? Like, what is this place?
Well, Levy Pants sounds like this really bizarre, almost surreal setting.
Right.
The building itself is described as a macabre unit.
Oh, my God.
It's this kind of dilapidated 19th century commercial building, but also a barn-like prototype of an airplane hangar with these two leaning smokestacks that give it the appearance of a broken television antenna.
Yeah.
So, just from that description, you get the sense that it's a place where efficiency and order have long since departed.
Yeah.
It's just waiting for Ignatius to arrive.
Right. To make it wreak havoc.
Even worse.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so there's this incident with this woman, Miss Trixie.
Yes.
And
yes, his time at Levy Pants.
And then Mr. Levy
is characteristically short.
Yeah.
And spectacularly disruptive.
Yeah.
So we have this kind of physical encounter with Miss Trixie.
Right.
The details of which...
Yeah, they're a little unclear. Are somewhat hazy.
Yeah.
But, involves Ignatius making gurgling sounds.
Okay.
And Miss Trixie ends up on the floor.
Okay.
And then Mr. Levy, the owner, shows up.
Oh, no.
At this exact moment.
Right at the worst possible moment.
The worst possible moment. And Mr. Gonzalez, this poor office manager,